Okay, so we're looking at like 7:01. We'll get the meeting started. One of the first things I'd like to do is if people would be so kind, in remembrance of a longtime member of the commission, John Radassi, I'd like to request that we have a moment of silence for him. I want to thank you, much appreciated. Also, I'd like to maybe get a motion to readjust the agenda and move the show cause hearing from first to third, and then bring up Westwoods up to number 1 and WD2 LLC to number 2. Can I get a motion on that?
So moved by Robert Eisner.
Second by Dave
Second?
Fox.
Any comments, questions? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I think we need to phonetically though. So, Berlandi.
Yes, sir.
Fox?
Aye.
I'm up next, I guess, so I'm a yes. Eisner?
Yes.
Simpson?
Yes.
Satchin? Yes. I don't know how we deal with Jay.
He's on the chat, and he said aye on the chat.
Yeah.
He's aye. And Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Okay. So with that, we'll go to the Westwoods Country Club, 14 Westwoods Drive.
Okay. So I don't believe Mr. Zomer was able to log on with us this evening.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm here. Hello?
Oh, you are? Perfect. All right.
I'm listening to all your antics over there. It's pretty entertaining.
I did not. Great. Fabulous. So this was discussed at the March 18th meeting. It was accepted, determined not significant, and we determined that a site walk was not needed. This is for a rebuild of the existing deck and expansion of to a new deck to provide an overall dimension for the deck of 40 by 30-ish, 31 and a half, off the clubhouse. Mark, did I get that right?
Yep, that's exactly right. Yep.
Okay. So at this point, it's ready for any additional questions, or it's ready for a vote. The 14 days has expired. There were no comments or questions from the public in the 14 days.
So if I'm reading our instructions correctly, we would start with Mr. Berlandi to see if he has any questions or comments, and I'll end up going last on all of this.
This is Rich Berland. I have no questions or comments.
Mr. Fox?
No questions or comments from me either.
Mr. Eisner?
No questions or comments.
Say my name?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, no comments from me.
Mr. Satchin?
No comments.
Mr. Tulin? Okay, he's got no questions or comments. Mr. Wolf?
No comments.
And I do not have any comments or questions either. So with being the case, I'm assuming that people are fairly content with what's being proposed. So I will entertain a motion to approve the application.
So moved. Aye, Wolf.
Is there a second?
Second, Mark Simpson.
Any other comments, questions? No, if not.
This is Commissioner Eisner. I would suggest that we incorporate the comments that a perimeter erosion control system includes silt fence or silt socks, and that appropriate trash and recycling containers be provided for both patrons and staff.
So it's A and B under the items for consideration.
Correct.
Okay. So with that, is there, you want to, I guess, vote
Yep.
individually on this so we have it for the record? So Mr. Berlandi,
Aye.
Mr. Fox,
Aye.
Mr. Eisner,
Aye.
Mr. Simpson,
Aye.
Mr. Stachin.
Aye.
Jay has already said aye. Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. So we have a unanimous decision there, and have fun.
All set. Great. Thanks for getting on, Mark. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Yep.
Be safe. Have a good night.
Okay.
Okay, so the next item up on the agenda is Bridgehampton subdivision.
Yep.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think Guy was on planning and zoning when this first came through, correct?
It was, I was, yes.
Yeah, and I was on the Conservation Commission when this came in. So I do remember this. I'll say for my part, I found some of the information a little confusing, like dealing with the lot numbers that were approved, because I'm not sure if those are some of the assessors' map numbers that they're talking about. And I went back and I read through the original planning and zoning approval. So I'm just not positive exactly what we're doing on this, other than the fact that it's a new application and we have not accepted it yet, correct?
Correct. It's a reapproval. So the lot numbers are oh my gosh, excuse me. The lot numbers have nothing to do with the assessor's map.
Okay.
They're the numbers to randomly number the lots for the subdivision. Whether you had 20 lots, they were numbered 1 through 20. This was originally numbered 1 through, or the original was 1 through 85. Based on conditions of approval, there are 78 lots. You'll see in the drawing that's up on the screen, there's actually lots 79 and 80.
Yeah.
But there's, this loop here ends at 10, and this loop starts at 13. I believe somewhere along the way, lots 11 and 12 were dropped, I believed, out of this configuration here. So the net result and the net approval after it went through courts and it finally got off the ground was 78 lots. So what you're seeing is most of this has been developed and is underway. This part in pink has not been developed yet. The roadway, infrastructure is in that utilities are in, but the process and binder is not in. Sorry, we've got so much bleach in the council chambers, it's starting to get to me. And then this is all currently completely undeveloped land. So what we need to do, because of the time frame, and they have exhausted their ability to get any further extensions, they had to come back for reapproval in order to be allowed to finish the development and have these still be considered buildable lots, because technically the approval expires. So that's why they're here. There isn't any change in configuration. There isn't any change in design, in intent, or any of the design elements. It's simply the timing of this.
Shannon, the numbers, this is Guy Wolf, The numbers, what are they? 21, 33, 22? What do they refer to specifically on this map?
So on this one, the blue numbers are the lot numbers, but again, it was just the lot number assigned at the time when they were counting all the number of lots when the subdivision was approved. Again, like I said, they started at 85, now they're at a total of 78. The red number is the actual house number, the mailing address for that house on the lot.
So the 20,
that's-
what I'm asking though is where it says lot 22, where is lot 22?
Lot 22 is right, so the blue lot 22 is right, can you see where my hand is on the
Yes, I
screen?
can. Yes, I can.
So that's lot 22, 23, 24, 25, 26.
And 31?
So
is
lot 31 here, 32, 33, so they came down, they basically numbered in a loop, in a clockwise direction.
Do you know the history of this?
I'm familiar with it, Guy, and I know that we've had the bridge crossings, I'm very familiar.
Okay. I don't know if the other members realize this was imposed on the town by the courts because originally it was turned down by TPZ because of the wetlands. You see the wetlands going through this and this small room between the wetlands and the lots. So what they're asking for is a reaffirmation of what they got from the courts. I don't see how we can stand in the way of that.
Well, and you also have the approval letter, or sorry, not an approval letter. You have an opinion letter from Halloran and Sage
Right.
with respect to this. And again, given that it was approved in 2006 and with modifications or conditions of approval, that if those, basically the letter from Halloran and Sage is saying that if nothing has changed substantially with either their proposal or any substantial change to the regulation, then yes, it has, you're entitled to go through the motions and to ask the questions to make sure that that is certain. It has to be, so the burden of proof is that it's substantially same approval that was sought in the previous application.
And as far as I could tell from that, your information, that's exactly what they're doing. They're asking for the same thing.
Yeah, yes, and the applicant and the attorney are on the phone and are prepared to speak to that and explain further for all of you this evening.
They just ran out of time.
They ran out of time? Oh, yeah,
But
right.
Okay.
Well, and
got
they
it.
have some explanation with, with the letter that they submitted as far as the housing market, obviously, that they got caught in the middle of.
Shannon, this is Mark Simpson. I understand the legal aspect of all this, but if they decide to do some building and it's within the upland, review area, we still have some type of comments or interaction with them, or is that just on a town basis, or does the committee get involved if they cross a waterway or do something to that effect?
Well, so the crossings, so the roadway crossings are already completed. You can see in blue is where the water course, and at the time it was a 50-foot upland area. And so that's what is shown here is the water course. And so there's two bridge crossings in order to get into this development. Those bridge crossings are in. The rest of this work is up here. There are no direct wetlands up in this area. It's back before us because the whole development is part, was included, and the drainage obviously comes down into here and feeds into it ultimately.
Hey, Shannon.
Yeah.
Shannon, this is Joe Troncalli. I'm with Wilson Development. Yeah, just to touch up further upon that. Yeah, so the two main bridges were the, the biggest part of the wetland approval. And we are past that point. And the only other piece that we will be impacting, and I say impacting, it's just a temporary impact as we cross the area, would be in that upper left corner where your mouse is right there. And that's when we bring the water down to the Glen Hollow extension. And that's in our, I don't know if you shared any of the maps we have, but there's an erosion control map dictating on how we are supposed to go about that. That stream is actually pretty dry. It was pretty difficult to find the first time we went up into the subdivision. We were like, what stream? But in the summer, sometimes it's completely dry, and that's when they want us to attack that little area there. And that's I think a 560-foot water main coming from Gateshead all the way down to Glen Hollow. And that was really the most realistic way of getting water to that extension. But any disturbance would just be us putting hay barrels on either side, crossing it 4.5 feet underground, and then reinserting the natural soil, keeping the hay barrels there as water goes through, just to make sure silt doesn't get through, and then removing them once some time has gone by.
Yes, Shannon, that was my concern, seeing that area being undeveloped. I didn't know what further involvement the committee would be involved.
And just for the record, there is no real record, but for purposes of discussion, I'm Christian Hoeb, and I represent the applicant here. And I think it's important to know that this was already approved in 2006 with conditions, and much of anything that has any implications as it relates to wetlands has already been accepted by the town. So this is nothing but a reapproval of an existing prior approval, and there's been no change in the original from the original application or the circumstances surrounding this application. And just for purposes of discussion, we're simply reincorporating all the testimony and evidence from the prior approved application. And we're willing to supplement the documents submitted by Mr. Troncalli, who's the Director of Operations, staff, including Mr. Sear and Mrs. Rutherford, who, by the way, has been exceptionally helpful in this process, because we've come in, and this crisis has occurred and delayed all of us over the last month or so, but staff was exceptional in getting this before you. We're actually, just so you know, we're scheduled to go before TPZ, I think May 11th. And I'm not aware, going back to the wetlands application, of any issues with the town staff as it relates to the prior approval as to wetlands and the actual reapplication. I'm not aware of any issue. There are some issues raised by TPZ through Bruce Sear, which we want to address, but we can't address until we have a new set of approvals. And I think you can take comfort in the opinion letter drafted by the town attorney, which reads that you're required to approve if you find that it's a similar application. And I think council even refers it appears to be similar. We assert that it is completely similar and there are no changes. So we're asking you to move us along, let us get to TPZ and try to bring a conclusion to this. And again, I'm not aware of any issues that would be an impediment to approval. Attorney Wolf, you did mention something about the lot numbers, and I can understand the confusions. On the overall application dating back to 2006, it talks about lot numbers, and that's what you see on the front page in terms of your application, because I believe that those were the original lot numbers before it was subdivided. And then what happens is the assessor goes through and reassigns the assessor's numbers. So it's completely understandable why you're looking at the application and thinking, what the heck are lots 22, 31, and 31 River Road doing with the rest of this? It's because those were probably the original lots that were then subdivided. So we're certainly willing to answer any questions you may have. We want you to feel comfortable, although we believe as a right we're entitled to approval. That's not the way I want to approach it. I want to accept any questions anyone has, and I think we're sincerely just trying to get the reapproval necessary to move this along. I don't know if anyone, Joe Troncali, as I mentioned, as you've heard from him, he's the Director of Operations. He's available also if anyone has specific questions. I hope that has some value. We did submit in writing a summary of what's transpired during the length of the process. It's hard to believe, 14 years, but it was really essentially the downturn in the market which has made this a really challenging endeavor. So here we are before you, kind of hat in hand, and asking for your approval. And, hopefully we can go ahead to TPZ and have that secured and deal with the remaining issues with them and then proceed.
This is Bob Hannon. I mean, my primary question in looking at the map and then looking at the lots, I understand the history. I don't really have any issues with that, but I'm still having a difficult time in terms of just exactly what it is that you're looking from the Wetlands Commission for. I mean, we're talking, is it just lots 22, 31, and 33?
No, it's a reapproval of the entire parcel. It really needs to be the entire parcel because they're all, they are all contiguous and all part of the application. And it's the same thing we're going to do before zoning. Even though we've built a considerable number and sold a fair amount of these, it still requires the overall approval because there are roadways involved. And so what we're seeking is, just as you see, the only confusion created is by using the original lot numbers, but that dates back to the original application.
Okay, so what you're looking for is a reconfirmation of the wetlands approval that was issued back in 2006.
That's simply it. That's it. That's
okay,
correct.
So I'm looking at this with different lots. I wasn't tuning in to how this was playing out because I'm looking at some of the lots and saying, yeah, they look a whole lot further away, than 150 feet from the wetland area. So upland review, they're way beyond that. So why are we talking about those lots? But with what you just explained, that makes it a little bit easier for me to comprehend. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, it's not easy looking at the numbers. I've been retained for a short period of time to assist them in this application and the application with TPZ. And it took a while for me to sit down and color code things and understand it and put it together too. Obviously, the applicants had this since 2006, but it's been a long time since you probably looked at it on the Conservation Commission. And,
Absolutely.
You're dealing with assessors, the original assessor numbers, then the subdivided assessors numbers, and then on there to add to the confusion are the street numbers. Assessors numbers and street numbers, as Mrs. Rutherford pointed out, rarely match. They're two different sets of numbers, and it's confusing to many, many people.
Okay, so no, but by you explaining that this is in essence to reapprove the wetlands permit that was issued, and we're not looking at any specific lots,
That's correct.
Clarify it.
Oh,
That's correct. It's the entire application, and we're not asking for anything other than the original approval. That's it. We're not asking for an extra foot, not an inch. Just the original application, reapproved, and so that we can go before TPZ and move on.
Okay.
this is Guy Wolf. Did I hear it correctly that at the time this subdivision was approved, the required distance from the wetlands was 50 feet, and we know now it's 150 feet. So is that a change in circumstance that we should consider on this application submission?
I think, well, my position is the same application. It's the same exact application.
But the regulations have changed, that the distance now is 3 times what it was at the time this was approved by the courts. And it's obvious that that distance does not exist between the houses and the streams on this plan.
Well, I think that would lead to a fairly unfavorable result for all the homeowners that reside in the area. And so I feel pretty confident.
They're grandfathered. It's the new ones. It's the new
So, well,
houses. Put in.
I mean, it would work both ways. If they're grandfathered, then, because if you look in the upper right-hand corner, I don't think there's any wetlands as it relates to in that area. Joe, you can chime in, but I'm.
No, that's fine. But I'm talking about anything. You want the whole plan reapproved, and I'm talking about that whole plan violates our upland review area regulation of 150 feet. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, you're free to, I guess, consult and confer with the town attorney. My position is it complied then, it complies now. We're using I would use the standards from the original application. But the application itself.
town attorney addresses that particular point. He says, unless one of the rules has changed, and it has, is what I'm telling you, or what it sounds like to me. That's why I say to Shannon.
Okay, well, I guess you know, what is the end result? Are you saying that all the homeowners are protected?
Well, they would be, because they're already there and in place. It's the
Well, I don't know any authority for that, but certainly if you were free to request an additional opinion from the town attorney.
Just my thoughts.
Well, Shannon, this goes back to what I was saying before I was a little concerned about, and maybe what Guy is saying. Do you have, because I'm not saying that what they're asking for is incorrect and everything else, but with now the regulation's gone from 50 feet to 150 feet, is there concern that they have to work closer with the town and meet those new requirements? So when they're working within 100 feet now of wetlands, that they need to take certain precautions versus the old jurisdiction of 50 feet?
The requirements, the best management practices put in place with respect to construction practices and erosion control are no different. The erosion control parameters and the detail for how these lots are constructed, how drainage systems are constructed, has not changed. And the level of care taken would be the same. The level of inspections would be the same that would be required. The concern and the understanding of the concern with this water course, Guy, I know you can correct me, but it's a cold water brook for cold water trout?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay. So there was an extreme amount of due diligence done on this at the time that this was approved. And that same level of care would be taken at the time that the Glen Hollow expansion were to be undertaken, where that water line has to be extended that Mr. Troncalli mentioned at the beginning of his discussion. The rest of it is a matter of maintaining erosion controls to ensure that sediment isn't transported off-site and that the drainage systems continue to function as designed. And that level of care has not changed.
This is Bob Hannon. If I remember correctly, this I think was one of the first subdivisions that came through where we were talking about the drainage system was primarily supposed to be infiltration, correct?
Correct. And there's infiltration systems for all the roofing, but there's also infiltration for the closed drainage system in the roadway. So there are sand filters that are behind the basins where the stormwater is allowed to infiltrate in those sand filters behind the catch basins. And then there is a high level overflow for a large, like when we get a hurricane, right? Those storms that are not going to be able to infiltrate in that amount of time, or when we get a heavy rain but the ground's frozen and we can't get the water to infiltrate. So there are sand filters at the back side of, if not all of the catch basins, then I would say 90% of those catch basins. So all of that water is infiltrating and there is not direct discharge into the wetland system.
That was a direct issue as it related to the cold water brook down there, to try to get the water back into the ground instead of having it run overland.
I think all the work as it relates to the upland review, 150-foot upland review, has been completed. I don't think there's any other outstanding work that needs to be done within a 150-foot upland review. And I think, as far as I know, staff has no issues with any of this.
That's correct. And not only just me, but our entire engineering division that is having to be out there on a regular basis as sewer lines, water lines, et cetera, are being put in. So there's multiple folks at varying levels are involved in this.
Yes, can I ask you a question? This is Bob Hannon again. Lots 13 through 20. You've got that sort of isolated pocket of lots, yeah. Is there anything that is being planned for that area? Because I see, according to the map, it's vacant land right now, but I don't know if those are planned for development or not.
Yeah, this is Joe Troncalli again. Yeah, the intention is to develop that property that was just kind of last on our construction phase schedule. So the plan is to get the pink area process paved and bonded this year, and begin the green area in 2021 and be completed by no later than fall of 2022.
Okay, the reason I was asking is because in looking at map OS-O or OS-0, it looks as though most of the lots along the entire brook system, water system, are all developed and have certificate of occupancy issued. So the only lots that could possibly be within that 150, it's what, 14, 15, and 17 maybe?
Correct.
I mean, but that's why I was just asking, just to see, because in looking at the map, it looks as though all the other lots that are close to the wetland area have already been developed and have the COs issued.
Correct.
Yeah,
all these
okay.
houses that are in yellow on this particular map are all occupied.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. You're looking at this map here. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, this is the one that Bruce here put together. So, and it's the same, the yellow.
Yeah, no, I just wanted a clarification for those lots, because I know it said vacant lots owned by others, or
Yep.
sorry, owned by WD2, additional approval. So I just wanted to get a clarification on that.
Correct.
Speaking to that, this is Ned Stanchion. Lot 76 is within the 150, that one's not developed either. So that would fall in the same as the 15, 14, and 17.
That's 76 here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not, it's, correct. That one is, all the road work is completed, but it is not occupied, correct? Sorry, right, it shows here differently. Yep, it's still, so it's all the improvements are done, his neighbor's in, this lot, just hasn't been sold and built on yet, so it's still owned by the developer.
So how about maybe we try this approach? We'll go back to the order alphabetically, go through the different commissioners and see if you have any other questions. And then one of the other things to think about, you don't have to say right now, but discuss to see if you think a site walk is needed or not. So with that, I guess we'll start with Mr. Berlandi.
I don't have any questions.
You still there, Dave?
Yes, I am. I guess, following up on the discussion of the 150 foot, would it be possible to take a look and see what hasn't been done within 150 feet so that we know exactly what it is that we're approving? Other than the water main, obviously, but if we can check to see those lots that we were talking about, 14, 15, and 17, and 76, and any others that might be within 150 foot of the wetlands. That could be analyzed. That would be helpful, I think.
Okay.
What exactly would you be looking for with an analysis on that?
Just like, I guess, depict the 150 foot setback area in relation to the proposed plan so that we can see what's being proposed within the setback area.
Gotcha.
You know, is a corner of the house in it? Is a driveway in it, or whatever is proposed to be put within those areas?
Okay.
I guess other than that, I don't have anything. So the roof runoff is going to be infiltrated, right? Correct. Okay. I'm guessing that there's not a homeowners associated with this development?
There is, but it's not in effect yet.
Because I know in a lot of other approvals, we do requirements for integrated pest management. And is that part of this proposal as well?
I'm not sure.
It would probably be good to at least consider that if it hasn't been.
We will definitely do that. So say that again. What is something that you typically add to homeowner associations?
Integrated pest management, I can get you the document, Joe.
Okay.
I'm not sure if we can impose it on homes that are already occupied.
Right.
So we'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah, I'm thinking of at least the newer ones.
Yep.
I think that's certainly something, Chris Hoeb, I think that's something we can review with staff. We can also look at our own documents. I haven't reviewed those, so, I mean, internally, I'm happy to work with staff on that.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Mr. Eisner?
I agree with the comment that Commissioner Fox just made, that it's appropriate to look at the current day approach and conditions that we typically impose. So I recognize the substantive, the major components of this application were approved 15 years ago. I do think it's appropriate to look at the areas that are within the agency's regulated area for reassessment. And while there may not have been whole-scale rewrite of our regulations or major statutory reform, certainly there has been change on a lesser degree to the regulations and statutes over time, and just as there has been 14 years of case law added. So I think that the approach that I want to take on the application, recognizing that it was approved at one time in the past, but I do think a fresh look from a 2020 perspective is appropriate. So I think that's the course that the commission should be on. That's the only comment I have, no questions.
Hey, Mr. Simpson?
No questions.
Mr. Stachin?
Yeah, so if we were to approve this, would it be, I mean, I look at the minutes from 2006. We would be including all the stipulations that were put down from the planning and zoning. I mean, it's a long list.
No, planning and zoning would have their own list. So this is going back to TPZ as well for a subdivision.
This is when inland and wetlands were part of planning and zoning, right?
Correct.
So
And
that's-
planning and zoning will handle, but it was, you'll notice there were 3 separate approvals. There's an inland wetlands agency approval because they acted separately as an inland wetland agency. So there's an inland wetland agency approval with 3 conditions, and then there's a subdivision and a special permit conditions. So there's 3 sets of conditions within this one set of minutes from April 18th, 2006.
All right, so then the conditions that were done at the inland wetlands would still hold.
Correct. And then you could add, obviously add to, you'd have to reissue those conditions, and then you can add to the conditions such as integrated pest management plan.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, the early discussion from Attorney Hoag was that we're just reapproving what was already approved. So I would think that all the stipulations that were put on previously would still stand if we're just reapproving what was already approved. That's why I'm not sure if, like, in the motion, we need to separately call out what was stipulated by the Inland Wetlands Commission in 2006, or if it's, you know, automatically understood that those should be there.
Any conditions, inland wetlands conditions from 2006 should be re-enumerated now in 2020. But
And the
items specific to subdivision and special permit will be handled by TPZ. Right.
Okay. All right, and then, I drove this, last night, and, I stopped at the bridge. I noticed there's, conduit holes with like a very light rubber covering over it. It looks like a temporary cover. And I was wondering, is there supposed to be, like lighting that's supposed to be continued on in that, or is it gonna be turned over to town with a temporary cover on the conduit?
Right now, there's
The town has,
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, right now, there's the option of putting lighting on the bridge. I'm not sure that it's required by the town, but I'm pretty sure, I wasn't around in the initial approvals, but it was desired to have those in there in case anything was ever wanted or desired to go in for lighting.
Well, my concern is if that light piece of rubber comes off and then you start getting water in there and it freezes and it could crack the concrete, depending on how close the conduit is to the edge of the concrete. But, I would think that we, you know, it's not really part of our situation, but it is something needs to be considered. Either a more permanent cover on those conduits or install the lighting that was, may be considered at one time.
Okay,
I
thank
think
you.
that'll be evaluated with the engineering department when they are ready to take over. So right now, even Bridgehampton, even though all the homes are on it, it's still private. So it hasn't been taken over by the town of Farmington yet. So there'll be nope,
Okay.
nope. None of the roads are town of Farmington roads at this particular point.
We love plowing.
What was that?
I said we love plowing them.
You love plowing, I know, that's your favorite thing.
All right, I have a question.
Anything else, Ned?
No, that's all I have.
Mr. Tulin, any other comments, questions?
So Jay he was curious if the opinion letter from Halloran and Sage also goes for TPZ. Yes, it was addressed to both Mark and I to share with both of our commissions. So if we approve this, does that mean they would not need to come before us to approve the 3 lots Bob Cannon just referred to? You're approving what is under review is the entire development, as has been discussed. And then any others within 150 feet. So it's the 3, and I'd have to check measurements to see the exact distance from property line to those wetland edges.
Right now,
So-
Shannon, right now it is developed as 100 feet. So it's 100 feet from the wetland line to
Yep.
property line.
Okay.
I use my engineering scale too.
Perfect. I have it up on a screen. It doesn't work real well. It's like using whiteout on your screen.
Well, it's handy that the scale actually goes to 150 feet.
So, okay. Jay said thanks, so I think he's set.
Okay. Mr. Wolf?
You heard from me already.
Okay. I mean, I don't really have too many comments. I'm glad to hear that the drainage system out there appears to be working as it was originally intended, because I know it was sort of a new philosophy. I mean, I guess, I'm kind of debating whether or not I would like to take a walk out there, more just to see the impact associated with lots 14, 15, and 17. I mean, I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue, but just to get the picture a little bit clearer in my head, I know when we're looking at that larger pink area for development, that's got nothing to do with wetlands, but I'm just curious as to how these lots play out with the issue that Guy raised. It may not have any bearing on a decision that I ultimately come to, but I'd kind of like to see those lots and just get a better perspective, because it's been a long time since just came before any of the commissions. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. But you've explained the information that I had questions on, so I appreciate that. So I guess, unless there are any other comments, I guess some of the things we need to do is, one, do we get a motion to accept the application? Do we want to discuss the site walk? Do we need to determine significance? Again, part of the issue before us is also that this was an application that had already been approved. So I'm not sure about the significance issue. That's kind of where I'm headed. So I'm happy to listen to folks, if I guess doing it one at a time, if there are no other questions on the application. Does somebody want to render a motion to accept the application?
Eisner makes a motion to accept the application.
Is there a second?
Mark Simpson, yes. I second it.
Any other discussion on that? Hearing none. Have a motion to accept the application. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? abstaining. Okay, so we're all set there, so we'll accept the application. What's your thought about a site walk, folks?
Dave would like to walk out as well.
I'm Sebastian, I would like to do a sidewalk here.
I think, as I said, a number of people haven't ever seen the site, so
This is Eisner, I agree, let's do a site walk.
okay, we don't need a motion for that, right, Shannon?
No, what we are gonna need is I'll need folks to just, watch emails. I will coordinate with Joe, because I'm not sure the easiest way to access those lots. It's gonna be off of Glen Hollow, obviously, so we're not traversing the stream. But it's in a bit. So let me work with Joe. The other thing is, we can't go in a group larger than 5. So we're going to have to do this in a couple of separate groups because it'll be me and Joe, if you're agreeable, I would like you there.
Yep.
So then it's going to be commissioners then, so that's 2 of the 5 slots, then it's groups of 3 of commissioners for those that want to and are able to go. I'm also happy to video the walk that we do for those that want to see it on foot and then share it with those that can't get there or aren't comfortable getting there but would like to see it. So there's a little...
Thing is there's an executive order that'll be signed within the next 48 hours that everybody's also got to wear a mask.
Fabulous. I get to be Batman again. Okay, so yes, we can do a site walk. We'll have to follow up with dates and logistics.
The next meeting is the 6th of May.
Sure. I don't have that information with me. I'm going to say yes, whatever the first Wednesday of May is.
Looking at the calendar. So, okay, so, I mean, we've got some time.
It is May 6th.
Thank you, Sandy.
Yep.
All right, so we've got a little bit of time to try to work it out too, so that's good for people. Anything else from any of the commission members?
Want to make a motion on the significant sidewalk?
I don't know if you heard Ned, Bob, he asked if you wanted to make a motion on significance or wait until after the site walk.
I would wait till after the site walk. I mean, I have to admit, I'm more inclined to say there's not a significant activity there because the application's already been approved. I'm more interested in seeing how the change in the regulations might have an impact. That's more of what my question is.
I agree with you, Bob. This is Mark Simpson. I don't, at this point, unless I see something different in the walk, I don't see this as significant.
Yeah, I didn't see it as significant either. I mean, and not to mention half the houses are built, so it's a little late.
Okay, so are we pretty well then set on this, Shannon?
I'm good. Yep. So we've accepted the application. We'll do a site walk and work through logistics. The next meeting is May 6th, and we're going to wait on significant determination until after the site walk.
Yep.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Yeah, thank you guys very much.
Thank you for helping clarify.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris and Joe.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Guess what? We're back to our favorite subject matter.
Yeah.
Just the
Okay.
names, locations have changed.
Yeah, our partners changed. Okay. I'll start and then I will turn this over to Attorney Shimkus. We have a hang on, give me a sec to get my correct set of papers up at the top here. Okay. So, the planning office was made aware of tree clearing taking place up on Forest Hills Drive in early March. Bruce Sear and I went to investigate, found a large number of trees had been removed around the home located at 69 Forest Hills Drive. And upon further investigation, found that there is a pond wetland area to the rear of the property. We got in touch with the owner, Mr. Michael Ancona, and he has been very cooperative right from day one. He responded to phone calls. He got an attorney involved. He got Davison Environmental involved and has been very cooperative. We explained our concerns with the trees being removed and the proximity to the wetland. We asked him to have a soil scientist go to the property to have this investigated to determine wetland and vernal pool concerns. You know, we obviously were suspicious that this could be considered a vernal pool, so we wanted both looked at, and he has been responsive. So we did issue a notice of violation and a cease and desist, and he has adhered to both. We haven't checked on the property on a regular basis, but we have been there, you know, just to look and make sure that there hasn't been additional clearing. There has not been. Obviously, we did allow him the things at the front of the home. We said, absolutely, go ahead and get cleaned up. It's well outside of any 150-foot area, and certainly entitled to get that area cleaned up at the front of the home. So that's the status from a staffing standpoint. Attorney Shimkus, I'll turn it over to you. I can bring up Matt's report. You folks just let me know what you'd like up on the screen, and I'm happy to accommodate.
Sure, thank you. This is Chuck Shimkus. I represent Michael Ancona, and he's here on this call as well with Matt Davison, as Shannon had described. First of all, Michael is here to answer any questions about what his intent was and what his knowledge was of any, inland wetlands or any type of buffer area. He was not aware. This was purely an innocent act of clearing some trees behind his house without knowledge that he, was within a buffer zone that would trigger a need for a wetlands review. So it wasn't a matter he was trying to go ahead and cut trees and clear his property in an effort to, without the town knowing about it. Frankly, didn't know that the town had to know about it. And Michael, I think you can confirm that. Is that correct?
That's correct. I didn't even know the pool was there. Yeah.
All right.
I had no idea of all of this.
And as Shannon, correctly characterized, as soon as Michael was made aware of this situation, he immediately stopped, and he has been cooperative from the very beginning. He did contact my office. We got involved with Michael. My office retained Matt Davison, and he's here this evening to further discuss, his findings and what his recommendations are on a professional level. So we certainly want the commission to be fully aware that there was no intent to deceive or to in any way circumvent the commission's authority. This was a purely innocent matter where my client was not aware of what was going to be required. So having said that, I would like Matt, if you could please go ahead and make your presentation. If you could first let the commission know what your qualifications are and what your findings are when you went out to the property. There is a report that the commission has, which is, I believe, revised April 11th, if I'm not mistaken. And I believe that report is up on the screen now. Matt, if you could take it away. Matt, are you there? Matt, if you're muted, maybe you need to unmute.
Can you guys hear me?
We can
There
hear
you go.
hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, confirming what Chuck just said, you have my report in front of you, which was revised April 11th. I first visited the site on March 21st to delineate the pond area, which is essentially a pond with a narrow fringe of bordering wetlands. It's located to the north of the property. It's for the most part within an Eversource easement, and a small portion of it looks like it encroaches onto Mr. Ancona's property. And after I delineated it, there was some correspondence with town staff and a request to go out and delineate or to do a survey to see if that ponded area was in fact a vernal pool. I came back out to the site on April 7th using waders and a dip net. I went into the pool, dip netted it, and did confirm that it was a vernal pool. And so in my report, I had some recommendations, you know, based on the tree clearing activities that have been conducted there. And basically what I recommended, and assuming that Mr. Ancona doesn't need to clear any more trees, my recommendation would be to not cut any more trees. The trees that have been cut are essentially at the edge of the yard. There hasn't really been much of a cover type conversion. So I think he stopped just in time. There's still a few mature trees in the area where the tree cutting occurred. So there's still a canopy there. And so I wouldn't cut any more trees in that area because it is within 100 feet of a vernal pool, or within what we call the vernal pool envelope. And in my report, I also recommended that I'm assuming a lot of the woody debris will be removed, the main stems of the trees that were felled, and then some of the tops. But I also recommended that there were some dead hemlocks that were also cut and are kind of laying almost on the ground in that area. I would recommend that they be diced up to lay flat on the ground to provide some habitat for the amphibians that come in and out of the pool. And I also recommended that you don't put any heavy machinery sort of within the wood line there, since the species that are utilizing the pool primarily live underground. I did also observe that the area of soil disturbance that's in the yard area is minimal, and so I didn't observe any erosion or any, you know, potential impacts from rain events or stormwater to the wetland and pool. And that's about it, if anyone has any questions.
I guess going back to our instructions, I'll start with Mr. Berlandi. We'll go back in alphabetical order.
Okay, from the map that's on the screen right now, how close to the vernal pool has been cleared?
The cleared area is generally about 70 feet from the pool. What I did was using what's called a hip chain. It's basically a forester's tool where it's string on a meter, which allows me to measure distance. When I was pulling it out from the edge of the pool, I started encountering stumps at about 50 feet, although there was minimal tree cutting in that area. And then really where the cleared area starts for the yard in the bigger stumps was about 70 feet away.
Okay, that's all I have.
Mr. Fox?
No, I read the report, and I think all of the recommendations that Matt just went over sound very good. No more trees coming down, and no heavy machinery and all of that. Hopefully, no big damage was done to the upland habitats surrounding the vernal pool. That's all I have.
Hey, Mr. Eisner.
First, thanks to Attorney Shimkus and Mr. Anaconda for coming in and spending time with us. I take it face value that what was presented is true, that it was an unintended, unknowing activity to encroach into the regulated area. So the fact that you're here willing to work with the commission is a good thing. I think moving forward, I would probably look at some additional restoration work. Had the owner come to the commission first and said, could he clear this amount of land on his yard we probably would have looked at the vernal pool to see if in fact it
Hello?
was a vernal pool, and if the conclusion was, as we found out that it is, we probably would not have authorized the full extent of clearing. So I think in addition to the recommendations that Mr. Davis has suggested, I would think the commission should consider some additional restoration work for reestablishing some additional trees in the area that was cleared. That's my only comment.
Okay, Mr. Simpson.
The only question I have is for, was it Matt Davison? Do you feel that, you know, the canopy surrounding this vernal pool is sufficient to keep it functioning properly? Do you think anything was cut down that maybe will dry up sooner than we expected normally in a normal year, and later in the summer when some of these creatures, well, the spotted salamander, and especially obviously the shrimp, might be dependent upon that water?
I don't think the vernal pool was adversely affected by what was done, and the main reason why is that the trees that were cut are really on the edge of what was already yard, and not all of the trees were cut. So there's, in other words, there was really no cover type conversion. Had he gone another 50 feet in and removed everything, it would be a different conversation. But I think it was selective enough, and frankly, he stopped in time where damage was avoided.
Well, from reading your report, which was beneficial, it was good. It's bad that this happened, but the good news is you found most, if not all, the eggs concentration was to the north of the pond, and that made it further away from where the issues are. And so I would assume, I hope, I'm not an expert, that the little creatures that are growing in there will survive from this event. But do you know what the life zone is for a vernal pool for the type of animals, amphibians that are living in there? How much room do they need to support their life? You know.
When you look at the upland habitat for vernal pools, generally you're looking at an area that extends about 750 feet from the vernal pool, which is an area that's referred to as critical terrestrial habitat. So that's basically an area that, experts have deemed potential habitat for the critters that use vernal pools. And generally when you look at overall impacts to a vernal pool's health, you're looking at it at a landscape level. In other words, there's a very large area around this pool that is habitat, not just the area that's sort of behind the house there. And I haven't spent a lot of time analyzing the aerials, but I get a sense just from being out there that a lot of that forest area that's surrounding this pool is still intact.
Mm-hmm.
So, based on that, and generally there's a sort of a threshold of once you remove 25% from within of, forest cover within that 750 feet, which is a very large area, the pool would start to degrade. But I don't think that's the case here, and certainly what he did didn't change that number.
All right. Well, I think for a bad situation, maybe it can be, there's remedies could be put in place to protect it in the future. I mean, not just from the homeowner. Obviously, this is mostly in an easeway by Eversource, so obviously they need to be notified of what is located on their property also. I have no further questions.
Okay, Mr. Stachin?
Yeah, and am I assuming that the reason this clearing was done is you just wanted like a little more yard space behind the house, or I guess to the homeowner?
Mike, that's a question for you.
I'll repeat. The reason, I was trying to get to the reason for the clearing. Was it just you wanted a little more yard space, like in the area behind the house?
Mike, are you on?
Mike, have you muted your microphone? If you have, unmute and you can answer.
if Mike doesn't answer, this is Matt Davison for the record. I did ask him that question when we were out there, and his explanation, because I was wondering if he needed to clear more, which would be of concern. But his answer to me, which seemed to make sense, was that they were large trees that were sort of leaning out over the home, and he was concerned. And there's actually still one more hickory that was kind of leaning towards the house that I was explaining to him was, you know, hickories are relatively stable and hardy trees, but looking at the trees that were cut and speaking with him, that seemed to be the main reason. He didn't seem to, you know, have a strong desire to want to expand the yard anymore. It was that fact.
Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like Michael is not on. I'm looking at the panelist list, and I'm not seeing him on there anymore. And I don't know, given that we've been on an hour and a half, if for whatever reason, if he lost power, got booted off, or whatever, like his phone died, I don't know if it'll let him back in at this particular point.
You are
Okay, sorry guys. I hit a button I shouldn't have, obviously.
Hello, I'm back.
This is
Hello,
Chuck.
this is Michael.
Well, Michael's back on.
Coleman.
Good.
I got cut out of here for something, so I missed it. Last I heard was someone talking about being upset about restoration, and can you hear me?
Yep, no, we can. It's great to have you back. So yeah, there was, one of the commission members is suggesting that a tree restoration, some restoration would be appropriate, and that can be discussed further. The current question on the table for you is what prompted your desire to cut the trees to begin with, if I've paraphrased that correctly? Yes, I'm getting a yes.
Well, it started out as just removing trees that were dangerous to the house and a proximity to the house. We still have one that's overhanging the house itself. The house was really inundated with trees around the house, and a majority of them were leaning towards the house. Well, it started out as a question of safety for human safety and occupancy safety.
Okay, are you looking to plant grass in this area now?
Yeah, we would plan to put grass out in any areas that are still open, of course, and yeah, of course.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, Mr. Toolin, any comments, questions?
Reading Jay's comments, he says, no questions, like the idea of tree restoration as suggested by Mr. Eisner.
Okay. Mr. Wolf?
I was wanted to ask Mr. Davidson, the power company's roadway goes right next to this vernal pool and eliminates coverage on that percentage of it. It would seem to me then that cutting the trees down on the side towards this house makes it even more at risk. Is there any way, as someone's already suggested, they could restore some of the trees and protect the vernal pool better than what it is now? I mean, what percentage of it is exposed by that road anyway?
I didn't look on the opposite side of the vernal pool. You could plant some trees, you know, that are more suitable to the space along the edge of the yard. In other words, not a danger to the house. You know, smaller shade trees or ornamental type, native ornamental trees along the yard area. Again, I think when you look at vernal pools, it's important to remember that the area of habitat that's critical to the vernal pool is a very, very large area that extends around the pool, you know, 750 feet from the pool in all directions. So, you know, in this particular action, the biggest concern would be Did you create any potential sources of erosion or anything that could degrade water quality in the pool, as opposed to the concern about habitat alteration, which again, if you look at it on the larger scale, there's very minimal. I mean, it would be less than 1/10 of an acre of, you know, a much, much larger area that is critical for the pool.
Okay, but I support the idea of some restoration being made and I'm concerned about grass, because grass brings fertilizers, it brings pollution into waterways, and that concerns me.
Is that it, Guy?
Yes.
Okay, I agree with some of the comments I've heard earlier. The question that I have right now is because it sounds like there are some additional trees that might need to come down, at least a minimum of one. I don't know if there are any dead trees out there which should probably come down. So I'm just wondering, based on what we're dealing with and some of the recommendations of the commissioner, should we be having an application submitted on this project? Because that way, if we have an application that comes in, we've got the information on the vernal pool, we can deal with any type of replanting that might be addressed, making sure that we're not dealing with any erosion control issues. And that way, the property owner also can clarify his intentions of what other trees may need to come down. And that way, we're not maybe doing this again if additional trees are taken down in the future, but we can try and get some of this all resolved with an application. So I'll throw that out. That's my primary comment. The other thing I will say is typically in the state where you see the largest diversity of wildlife is actually along Eversource rights-of-way, because you don't have people going out there all the time. So I have to admit, I was not surprised that this is a vernal pool, just simply because of what you see along some of the Eversource rights. But those are my comments. So, I mean, I don't know what other people feel like about, you know, having an application come in to get everything down on paper so that everybody knows who's responsible for what.
Yeah, this is that statute, I think that's a good idea to have an application, and then, I think, you know, if there is a house endangering the tree, I think, you know, he certainly has the right to take something like that down. And he was nice enough to, you know, cease and desist with our notice, but, if there's still a tree that might be endangering his house, he certainly has the right to take something like that down.
Any other comments?
Do you need a motion?
Well, I'm just wondering how people feel about it.
I think the application idea is a good one also. Dave?
Okay. Okay, and I heard from Jay. So how about, is anybody interested in making a motion on this one that do we need a motion that they file an application, or do we just say they need to file an application, Shannon?
No, I think we just need to tell so this is what we'll have them to proceed, is file an application. And so obviously we've got the vernal pool report. So what we would want then is you want a basic type of mark out of any additional trees that need to be taken down, a quantity and rough location on a plan.
That would be appropriate.
And then a restoration plan or recommendation, let them discuss based on our comments that we don't want to see a lot of lawn because we don't want the fertilizer and the pesticide and the runoff into the vernal pool. Certainly respecting Matt's opinion as well that, you know, probably something low growing might be appropriate. So let them put the ball in their court to come back to us with a restoration plan that's appropriate for the area.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that gets us to a point where we then know what's going on out there, but at the same time, it gives the property owner a chance to take a closer look at the property to see what else may need to come down from a safety perspective, and that way everybody's on the same page.
Okay. I don't have any objections. Attorney Shimkus, you've got any thoughts on that?
Well, I guess the first question I'd like to ask Michael is, are you intending on taking down any other trees? I know there was one tree that was mentioned, but then Matt indicated there was a hickory tree and may not be a danger to the house. Would it be your intention, Mike, to want to take down any additional trees, or is the trees that are down the end of it?
I'd be good to leave the trees the way they were. As Matt said, that hickory tree seems to be very strong. I mean, I don't like the way it's leaning towards the house, but in the other terms, to save the quality of the vernal pool, I'd be more than happy to leave it and leave the grounds where it is. I would hate to see that vernal pool turn into a problem for, habitat in the area. If I had any idea personally that this was going on, that this would have been a problem, I would have definitely been here to the city firsthand to see how to resolve it without an issue of disturbing the property. So, I mean, it's in your hands. You tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do what I can to resolve it or keep it at status quo.
Or so having said that, since any additional trees are not going to come down and there won't be any further changes, maybe we could submit just a restoration plan through you, Shannon, for review, rather than a whole new application. I mean, there's nothing that's going to change that would trigger, I think, a new application, but we could certainly submit a restoration plan that could be considered by staff and then ultimately the commission.
This is Bob Hannon. I'm just kind of thinking out loud. I'm just concerned that, in another year or two, if something's going to happen, I mean, I'm assuming if at that point in time, somebody would realize that there is a vernal pool, you do have the setback area for the wetlands, and therefore somebody would need to come in to be able to do any work in the backyard here.
This is Matt Davison, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but one of the things in the restoration plan, and having done a restoration plan in Farmington before, is there could be signage included which indicates to whoever owns the property that there is a protected resource area beyond the signage, essentially.
So I could use the easement markers.
Yeah, but there's no, the easement that's there is Eversource, and I think the town actually has access as
Right.
well.
No,
Off-
so we could do we could, as part of this, discuss, do we put a conservation or request, we can't put it on, but request as part of this, that a conservation easement be granted so that 30 or 50 feet from the edge of the vernal pool does not get cleared, because we wouldn't want it cleared anyway. And so you could request an easement and have then the markers installed. So that's one approach.
This is Mark Simpson. When we had these cases in the past, if there's no further work is going to be done, maybe something about the lawn might be something we might want to talk about, but we've never done an application. We restricted or we advised the person about what direction they should go in.
This is Matt Sebastian. Yeah, I think if his intent is not to take any more trees down, then maybe an application isn't needed. I think we're more concerned about looking out for, the property's interests about any dangerous trees. But if he's comfortable with them, then I don't know if he needs the application. And obviously now, if the condition of the hickory changes and starts leaning more, he'll know that he has to notify the town about, anything doing, and then it would also, you know, well, this was closer, this was, not anywhere where we could put an easement in, so, but I think he'd be aware that, he needs to notify the town if we were gonna take the tree down.
Well, I would assume that the hickory tree would have to be within the easement area.
Yeah, I don't know, it depends on where it is on the property,
Yeah, I don't know.
so.
Because if it's not in an easement, the property owner, you know, well, if it's how close that is to the pool and everything else, I don't know these facts.
You know, I thought one of the comments was the whole backyard was basically within the 150 feet of the wetland area.
It is.
So from that perspective, any work done back there, easement or no easement, would still require authorization from the commission, right?
Well, at least at the staff level, depending, right? Because if it's a shed or a pool, then typically we're, you know, if it's an above ground pool, we're doing those at the staff level. Sheds typically at the staff level. Yep. So yes, but it's a phone call. We go out, take a look, make sure everybody's on the same page, and we move ahead. But yes, you're correct. It does get some type of review and oversight.
And just to let Jay know that I am reading his comments, he raised a question. He said, nobody's brought it up, but do we want to do a site walk? I'm not hearing anything. Does that mean no?
Jose is awfully quiet. I don't think, let's make sure I can hear you, so I gotta be able to hear everybody. Everybody else is unmuted. I haven't done.
Well, we've done
I-
site visits in the past as Mark Simpson, so, when we had these kind of experiences, so I don't think it's not out of the ordinary to do it.
This is Robert Eisner. I don't feel compelled to do a site walk on this one. But if the commission wants to, I'll help keep the group under 5 by not attending.
Thank you. And we have staff photos, and we have the photos that that are part of Mr. Davison's report. So there's really not much other than what those photos represent. And perhaps if the hickory tree in question, you know, perhaps Mr. Ancona could pull a tape from the house, one of the corners of the house, so we get an idea where this particular hickory tree in question is, where it lies in relation to the home, and we get a sense, then that may answer the underlying questions or outstanding questions that are remaining for this.
Mike, can you unmute yourself?
No, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm trying to see if I could see the tree on one of the photos. Yeah, I would have no problem going out there and measuring it for you from like one of the corners of the house or somewhere, if that's what you're requesting, you want to know how far from the house it is. Yeah, I'd have no problem with that.
Okay.
So are we looking at an application? I'm getting the feeling that folks aren't necessarily interested in going that route, but we may require some type of a restoration plan and identifying where the hickory tree is so we get a better understanding of what's going to be done out there. And maybe also associated with that is some type of documentation showing how to stabilize the area so there is not an erosion sedimentation control problem.
That sounds good to me. Aye.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. This is Rich.
Okay. Do you want to consider a conservation easement?
Well, I think there's got to be some type of markings out there of what is out there, so I assume there would have to be some type of conservation easement.
That also sounds good. Aye.
Okay.
I think I would probably be willing to go along with that also.
What would that look like typically, like 50 feet from the vernal pool, or?
Well, so what I will do is send the document to the Attorney Shimkus and the team, the owner and Mr. Davison. Let them review the document because there's obviously restrictions for that. My general thought is that it would go to the current edge of clearing, and to the extent that that's a defined line, so that the yard he has and is there will remain, and that edge of clearing that, per the report, seems to have left sufficient habitat, that's what would remain then, to provide a reminder to all future homeowners. So there'll be the visual markers in place, and then the easement to get recorded on the land records.
All right, Michael Ancona. As to the easement, I'm not really familiar or understand what this easement would cause, and who would have the easement to enter the property.
So I will send you the document. It's going to be easier for you and your attorney to read the document, take a look at the requirements in the document, and what it basically is doing is saying that wooded area between your edge of lawn and the vernal pool remains your property, but we are requesting via this easement that it remains in a natural, undisturbed state, so that trees aren't taken down to put a shed in, that a swimming pool does not get installed next to the vernal pool. So it doesn't eliminate your passive use of the property, but it would reduce any active use other than hiking and nature.
Right, within the 50 feet of the vernal pool, per se.
Per se, again, using that as the rough estimate that Matt indicated when he was marking that distance off. So we would need, need that area formalized, and it would have to be on a surveyed plan. So there'll be a cost incurred because we need to have that documented with a meets and bounds description and shown on a plan that gets filed on the land records.
Would have been nice if that was done before, wouldn't it have been? All right, I guess send it over to Attorney Shimkus. We'll review it. I'll discuss with him what the plan's going to be and how it's going to go. And we'll see what he says.
Will we be able to get some information in for the meeting on May 6th?
So that would be a restoration, at least a draft of the restoration plan by May 6th?
Yeah. And then at least have some idea as to whether or not the conservation easement is a viable possibility.
Okay. So is that manageable by May 6th, Michael and Attorney Shimkus?
That's a question for Matt. Matt, is that doable?
Yes, it is.
Okay, very good.
The other thing that I would recommend, because one of the issues that is still out there is whether or not there are any fines associated with this. I would say that if we talk about any finances, let's tie all that into what the restoration plan is, conservation easement, and take all that into consideration.
I agree with that. I think, yeah, and any kind of fines would have to include, you know, if there's a cost for a survey, if there's a cost for the restoration, and all those things should be considered before the fine.
I agree with you. So,
Okay.
are those our marching orders?
I think so. If there's
Okay.
any commission member have any other questions on this?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, Attorney Shimkus and Michael and Matt, you guys are all set?
I think so.
Thank you.
Shannon, you and I will talk, obviously, and just make sure that I have my checklist that matches yours.
Certainly. Yep, we can follow up tomorrow. I'll be in the office.
Okay, very good.
Very good.
Good night.
Thank you all for getting on.
Thank you.
I appreciate your working with us on the online platform.
It was interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Thank you.
This is Mark Simpson here. I just wanted to say something to Guy Wolf. Guy, I referred to your amphibians and reptiles in Connecticut book that you provided us to research this discussion tonight.
I am happy to hear that, Mark.
Well, you're probably amazed I even found it, probably. You know, I do drop things in very unfindable places after I put them there. So I did have it, and I reviewed it.
Was it helpful?
It was helpful.
Good.
So, planners report?
Yep, I have just one small thing for you. The resident at 1 Old Gate contacted me. She has some tree removal at the rear of her property. There's some pine trees that were put on a berm that's adjacent to a intermittent water course. It flows with stormwater flow. You can see all the stormwater. These are 2 stormwater outlets, and there's a small water course here between 1 and 24. Their pine tree, they're dying on this berm. It's the wrong tree in the wrong location. So she's going to have them removed. We discussed, you know, obviously have everything come into her yard, nothing into the intermittent water course. No material to be deposited in the water course, that I'll meet out with her contractor. And she does have some rhododendrons on the inside edge of that berm that are blocked by these large trees are going to remain. It's just, like I said, some small ones that are up. And she's going to replant that, because she had talked about removing the berm, and I said, no, we're not removing the berm. It's stable on the water course side. So the berm's going to stay, and she's going to work with it and replant with suitable material, native species. So I just wanted to inform you that the work will be going on in case anyone is that way and are concerned that trees are coming down near a water course. They've been in touch with us, and this is the direction that it's moving.
It almost looks like there's some dead trees in there, but I can't be sure.
It's tough to tell, and this is a 2016 aerial, but they were spindly pine/evergreen trees. They did not look happy, to be sure. Not nearly as happy as these guys that you're seeing here that show up very prominently in the aerial. That's when she first called me, I thought, oh, fabulous. These were the ones that she wanted to take down, but thank God that wasn't the case. It's all lower, much smaller things. They're like a 3-inch caliper, 3-4-inch caliper. So
What's that address?
it's 1 Old Gate. So it's just an FYI.
Okay.
Okay. And that's it. That's all I have for planner's report for
So we
wetlands.
have no questions for household hazardous waste?
Well, I was going to do that on Conservation Commission, but yeah, household hazardous waste is canceled, cleanup day is canceled for April 25th. Likely, given the extension of social distancing to May 20th, it is not going to get rescheduled. We will simply go to the next event, which is right now scheduled for early June. I want to say June 8th, but it's up in Simsbury. So assuming the social distancing mandates have been lessened by then we will be able to proceed with that at that point. There have been some posts on Facebook, various people going ahead and doing their own part to do cleanups in their neighborhoods or on their walks on river trails and whatnot when they've been out and about anyhow. But obviously no formalized organized event with hundreds of people like we have in the past. And bulk waste pickup is still on April 20th to 24th.
Thank you.
Yes.
That is for planners report?
Yes, sir.
Minutes for March 18th. I will be abstaining, by the way.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of March 18th, Ned Batson.
Dave,
Second
second.
for Mark Simpson, yeah.
Okay. Any comments, corrections? Hearing nothing, those in favor?
Aye.
I am abstaining.
Okay. And Jay, we've got your eye on the chat. Thank you.
Okay, so that's it for wetlands. So at 8:42, we'll close that and start the Conservation Commission meeting. First thing I see is Land Acquisition Committee report.
Yep. There's none because they didn't meet.
On that, I have told Liz I am no longer going to sit on that because of conflicts at work or potential conflicts at work. So we do need to appoint another person to the Land Acquisition Committee.
Okay.
So again, we'll think about it. Maybe we can, well, we're still not going to be in person on March 6th, but or May 6th. But if somebody's interested in participating, maybe let Shannon know, and then I can talk with Shannon and we can do something about that.
Bob, do you mind, can you, it might be helpful just briefly the commitment that's required?
Typically, they meet once a month. I want to say it's on a Thursday. It's usually at 5 o'clock. It runs about an hour. And that basically is it.
Yeah, in the whole scheme of things, it's not overly onerous.
No.
The toughest part is the 5 o'clock meeting time on a Thursday, but at this rate, we're all getting so used to our Zoom meetings and calling in, pretty much anything would be possible. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, it'd be a lot easier for me to make a meeting with them now because I'm not in Hartford.
Right.
Right. But again, because of changes at work and what my responsibilities are, I don't want to take a chance of running into a potential conflict of interest on it. So I'm stepping from that one.
Bob, Ned had a question. Are there site walks typically?
No.
No. No, and typically the people that are doing most of the work, it's Liz. I don't know who the new chairman is going to be since the last election, and Bill Wadsworth.
Astro something.
They do a lot of it.
Yeah, Liz does a lot of the research and puts a lot of the mapping together.
Yep.
Yeah. So. Okay, thank you for providing the additional explanation.
Okay. Do you have anything for planners report?
No, like I said, the only thing was the the household hazardous waste, which we've already tackled. So no, I don't have anything in addition from a Conservation Commission standpoint.
All right, so then we go to approval of minutes, March 18th. I got a motion to approve?
So moved, Dave.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Any comments, questions, corrections? Hearing nothing. Those approving? Aye?
Aye.
And I'm abstaining.
And Jay's noted as an aye on the chat.
Yep.
Alrighty, folks. I think
Well, I
that's a
like
wrap.
these meetings because I'm enjoying my